Welcome back to the Grand Cinema Hotel. I'm your host, Gus, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Alvaro.
What's up, guys?
Room 189, Sean Durkin's new film, The Iron Claw, Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, sorry, excuse me for that. If you listen to the top 10 episode, then you definitely know that this is one of our favorite films of the year, or of the last year, excuse me. Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to Alvaro. Happy New Year to the audience, you know, everybody out there. Yeah, spoiler alert for the last episode, I guess. This is very high up for both of us. And we knew we needed the own episode, so here we are. It's time to do it. Alvaro, Iron Claw.
Yeah, I think the trailer for this probably was coming out pretty early on in the year, maybe even a year before. Had heard about it. I remember, this is going to be funny, but there's a movie that got promoted a long time ago. Who knows if it's going to come out now, but like Jonathan Majors was like a bodybuilder in it.
I heard about it. I think we talked about it when we did the Creed episode, that was like something to look forward to.
Yeah, and like so there's a lot of films that I felt like last year, at least, I was like, oh, they're doing a lot of like pain and gain type of angle, which I actually really enjoyed. There's not enough of, but when I did see the trailer for the Iron Claw, I was excited for it, and I think I wasn't really even sure of what to expect, because I didn't really look much into it. But then after I saw it, I think it's kind of a formula that ends up working for me, like to really love movies. And it's just better than my expectations, honestly.
2 points to what you just said. My first recollection of this film is that picture of Zac Efron coming out of the trailer with the Lord Farquaad haircut and the cutoffs, and everybody was just like, what the fuck is this going to be, right? Also, I wanted to bring this up because we were just talking about it off mic, but Zac with just the C, right? This is always the allegiances of Zac, right? The different variances. Are you an H? Are you a K? No, I'm a C.
I might be adding
a third
to this.
Different option.
I might have to add to this and do a ZAK.
ZAK?
Yeah.
Do you remember the wrestler Zack Ryder? Was Zack Ryder a ZAK? I'm not sure.
I believe so.
Interesting. That's the most elusive one, right? That's like Zac, right?
I'm going to do it with the Q.
Zook. Zaku.
Yeah, Zaki.
But yeah, so I didn't really know what to expect either. And what you said right now about like bodybuilder, meathead cinema, I don't think that I would have expected... I don't know what I was expecting, but like that's not too far off, right? But it is that a little bit, but it's so much more than that, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like we do get that, which is kind of satisfying. It's like you see all these guys that look like He-Man, but instead of just being like dumb action figures, they're these tragic, like Shakespearean characters.
Yeah, I think that adds to the you talked about
it's Shakespeare and He-Man, man. These Von Erichs, right?
The movie, the black and white movie from last year, Divinity. It is Divinity and this movie are trying to say the same things, but obviously in a way different angle. And I do think even you could say that both films prioritize style, but they come across in way different ways. And obviously one is based off of a true story, but I do think it's pretty heavy on this once you look into details as much as you could. That there is a lot of things here taken a little bit differently for the sake of the movie working better, and I think they're really well made decisions. And Sean Durkin here, I feel like really was able to show off his love for wrestling as a kid, and it's just able to capture a time, such a unique time in wrestling, in a sport that at the time seemed very like regional. And to be able to kind of like evoke that feeling as a British like director or just an audience member is, I think, I was just felt fascinated by the way this film was approached.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that I don't feel like you get this dynamic that often of somebody directing a story of something that they were such a fan of and like also your hero being these people who are like these really tragic characters. I mean, they're real people, obviously, but you know, it's this really tragic story. And then like for these to be your heroes, you know, like who really gets to make a movie about like heroes other than outside of the superhero realm, right? Or like people who are betrayed that way, and then for them to be so sad. I can't think of anybody who personally has come out and be like, oh, this was my hero when I made a movie about them, you know? Like these biopics that come out, like, I don't know, the people who made the Queen movie or the Johnny Cash movie or anything like that, like, would they really say, or Ford versus Ferrari is like, is Lee Iacocca really your hero? You know? Or it's just like, oh, this is an interesting story. We can really punch it up, make it something worth watching. But then for it to be these guys, you know, like, I wonder what kind of effect that has on a person at such a young age, and then to see a movie like this and it's like this is how he envisioned it in his head. And this is kind of a sidebar, but I saw this in reference to May December because the guy who made December is about or whatever. Have you seen that? He's like kind of pissed that they never hit him up and asked him about it.
Yeah.
And that led to people saying that was like, oh, and A24 just did this too, and Sean Durkin did this with the Iron Claw. They didn't approach David Von Erich or Kevin Von Erich until the movie was already finished or whatever. But I don't really have an opinion on that one way or another because biopics are already not really my favorite genre of movie. They're kind of hit and miss for me, but I don't know if it's always better to have the person involved or not involved or whatever. And I say all that to say that I think that this was handled with pretty, like, a lot of care. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like it was handled pretty well and the best it could be for, like, such a sad story. And then, like, there's certain aspects of it. It's like they miss some stuff, but then it's the story is so sad that you had to make it less sad to make it realistic. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that was an interesting touch as well, that it's like we can't just keep doing this, you know? Like, how much more sadder can we really make this? We kind of have to make it less sad than it actually is. That's another interesting thing, because when I walked out of this movie with my wife and we were talking about it and we were Wikipediaing them and looking more stuff up, we're like, what the fuck? Like, how is it worse than the movie, which generally punches things up and makes them more dramatic than they might actually have been? But that was a new dynamic for me. So the whole Sean Durkin angle of making this movie, how he did it, is something I'm not really accustomed to be honest. So I thought that was really refreshing when I watched this movie.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique approach, I think, just because based off of the same thing of you can always show respect or have an admiration for somebody and know more likely to put yourself in the shoes and be like, I wouldn't want X, Y, and Z. But sometimes I don't think that is the point of the movies. I do think, like, a director like him, which this is for me, this is the first film of his that I've seen. I don't even know if he really has.
Yeah, I don't really know Sean another Durkin major that well, film. Honestly, I know he does. He has like one or two.
But it's, I think he understood again. I think a lot more of this story in a way maybe that most people sometimes don't understand.
8 movies
when they're directing a biopic, and I think at the end of the day, the based on a true story is always the highlight of a lot of the movies, because, you know, the ideas are there. These things, they're not unique in their own way. There's other people who have had same amount of tragedies happen to them that aren't popular. So I do think at the end of the day, this is like one of those things that Scorsese kind of talks about, like stories being put out there that need to be told. And that's how I felt about this movie. And I think Sean Durkin approached it that way, as in terms of there's great tragedy here with characters or in the sport that it's obviously grown in a lot of different ways, and but its basis of it is, especially back in the day, there's a lot of interesting stories to be told there.
Yeah, I think that it's like this specifically because they're like this American story. It fits in really well with like the American mythos, you know, like, yeah, this is a very American story, you know. Also too, with just like the wrestling side of it, I think they did a lot of really like cool wrestling sequences that showed you like the fun side of it and why it's so entertaining. And even if you don't like wrestling, or you're like me, like you're a post wrestling fan where you loved it at one point, but you're just like, it's okay now. it really did invoke a lot of that feeling I had when I was a little kid, like watching the promos and then like the intro, you know, like the behind the scenes, like the costumes of it, all of that kind of stuff. Just like the showmanship of it, you know. Like I think as a kid I really liked it because it was like this physical like man dude thing, but also like really artistic and creative at the same time. It's like somebody like Sting, you know. It's like this guy wearing tights and makeup, but also he's like the baddest motherfucker you've ever seen, you know. Like, so it's always been this really interesting dynamic to me, and then to see it portrayed in this way, and it's like, yeah, you have Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler, but I don't know how many other movies you really have that are like dramatic family tales about like what wrestling can do to people, you know. Like I remember as a kid when you would watch like a wrestling video or DVD or something like that, it would always have the warning in the beginning, and it would show all the injuries of like real injuries that people suffered, and it was like, don't try this at home or whatever. And I don't think that we've really had that in any kind of wrestling like product that exists outside of the WWE itself. You know what I mean? Like, well, how many wrestling movies do you actually know? Because I only know of 3, I think. I know of this movie, The Wrestler, and there's this one with the guy who plays Dewey in Scream, the cop. The sheriff dude is married to Courtney Cox. He's in a wrestling movie a long time ago. And those are the only 3 wrestling movies I know.
About wrestling, it's just probably The Wrestler in this movie. So I haven't seen.
Yeah, it's called Ready to Rumble or something like that.
It's like untapped completely to me, I guess. Trying to think if there's any like funny movie. I guess Nacho Libre.
Oh, true, right? That's the first thing. Yeah, the most important wrestling movie. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, for me, I've never really seen it taken on from this angle. You know, I mean, it's always been like, it's silly or it's cool, but it's just entertainment, you know. But it's like, this is like the raw, gritty underside of it without really being that, you know.
And I guess like also like the Latino side of me is like especially in Mexico,
all the Santos movies.
It's like, yeah, you have all like, so it's the whole like, there's always especially before, it seems like there's a bigger audience for wrestling, and then they took their wrestlers very serious enough to be actors. I think that's where the first that's where ideas like that are implanted, where it's like they are acting up there as characters, so they can go hand in hand. And Santos was like, the movies are, well, the ones he's in is like, he's like, you know, the badass, but there's other movies where you just really lean into the comedy side of it. But in America, you know, I do think the wrestlers kind of more want to be in movies. They're not necessarily themselves in movies or movies about wrestling. So this was like I would say variant. And I haven't even seen The Wrestler either. So
I've seen it once. It's like, there's a lot of wrestling documentaries.
Yeah.
Like that for sure. Even when I was a kid, like I saw a documentary about like Andre the Giant when I was a kid, you know. And then wrestlers have always been these like larger than life figures. Like some of them have crossed over before, like Andre the Giant or Hulk Hogan or Mr. T, I guess, right? There's always like one that's in the zeitgeist, you know. But this story, like the Von Erichs, I do appreciate that it was handled this way, because we saw this movie a long time ago already now, like from this recording. I saw it on Christmas, and then when I talked to you about it, I had said that I really liked that the wrestling side of it, even though you saw like all the tragedy that came from it, they never made it seem like this is why you should not wrestle, or this is why wrestling is an awful thing, you know?
Yeah.
Versus like something like the concussion movie in the NFL, where it's like, the NFL should be illegal, you shouldn't be able to do this, you know? Like, I like that this movie handled the characters in a way where it's like, this is something that's destroying us and our family, but we also like love this, you know? So it's like, this wrestling is like this double-edged sword, you know? And it's like something that's so fake but so real at the same time, because the repercussions of it are pretty insane, you know, like what you're putting your body through and like your brain through too, by taking all of this damage that's supposedly fake, you know, just because it's scripted.
Yeah, I took the wrestling here as like the least important thing personally. So like I did feel like they were just wrestlers, and it just had more to do with like the father element to these things, and you know, beliefs of American beliefs of curses and things of that nature. So I think that's why I like the wrestling sequences work so well for me, because they're shot amazingly. You know, even how the film opens with the black and white with
that
the dad.
That shot has stuck with me for a long time. I was like, wow, they're trying to do the Raging Bull, like, and it looks good while also not being a complete rip off of it either.
So stuff like that, I did feel like, again, talking about a wrestling is seen in all around the world, but at the time that this movie is in, it did seem very, it's like insanely American. And I do think it just plays with, like, you know, the tragedy of families and tragedy of loss, and just the curse is heavily, I think, something that really takes the forefront in this movie. So I think that's why the wrestling scenes work a lot for me, because they just seem to be the moments where everything is the most positive. Those are the highs, and because they're so action filled, it's like you can feel your body going with these emotions, which is I would say maybe more unique to sports movies or movies where are more action driven. You know, like John Wick has that same feeling where you're kind of like, those action sequences, you're just like your body is feeling this high, and then you come back down. So it was very interesting to have that feeling, but then also have it draw emotionally towards, you know, a lot of the really bad, sad tropes in this movie.
Nice. Let's talk about the fun stuff for a bit, because this movie, while it is awfully sad, there's a lot of cool, fun, dude, bro stuff in this movie that I feel like it's like, this is definitely a good fellas movie. You know what I mean? So it's like the wrestling, right? The actors, pretty cool group of actors, right?
Yeah, I mean,
like, especially for our age group and younger, you know, like these are some guys to look out for, right?
Yeah, I mean, Harris Dickinson, like you said, I think ends up being my favorite performance here.
Repeat guest at the Grand Cinema Hotel, Triangle of Sadness.
Yeah, you know, so he has a very interesting set of movies that he's been in for a while now.
Like, two cool choices, like very cool choices, you know?
And then, yeah, you have Zac Efron, like you said, just with a C, which maybe is
Zach with a C, bitch.
the one that is the kind of like in general audiences similar to Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, where they're like, oh, they're still around, and it's like, well, you know, they get lost, I think, especially because they're not in huge movies, they get lost, and then now they appear after years of, again, getting more seasoned, and they're like, wow, this performance comes out of nowhere, but not really. So I do think, like, Zac Efron obviously had a lot to carry here, and I think he does a standout. And, you know, Jeremy Allen White is probably one of the most popular actors right now. Calvin Klein model.
Yeah, dude, did you see, well, before we get to the Zac Efron of it all, did you see that Aaron Taylor Johnson is, you know who that is, right? That he, for some reason, decided, like, this is a good time for my Calvin Klein ad to resurface.
He's like,
I didn't know that there was either a real or online real beef. I don't know if it's between the fandoms or if it's like, he's like, what the fuck? Why is this guy stealing my limelight? Which is like, why are like, you think you two are occupying the same space, right? But interesting. And the funniest one I saw about it was like, he didn't like that his Waluigi was getting too much spotlight recently.
Yeah, exactly. Like, nah.
So that's an interesting thing where I'm like, I don't know too much about that, but that's why I think the internet is so funny. It's like, now I'm aware of this, like, I don't even know if it's real, fake internet beef over these two guys. I'm like, why did he do that? That is interesting. But yeah, Jeremy Allen White is, I would say, bubbling because all those years on Shameless and stuff like that, he had been in some other movies that I've seen him in where it's like, you know, there's sometimes you just, like, you see a guy who's on TV and then you're like, I don't know, like, when they're good on TV, but then when they're in movies, it doesn't feel the same, you know? Like, I've seen him in probably 3 other movies, and I think it's because he kind of played a character in those movies where he was not, like, the suffering, brooding guy, you know? And, like, I do think that that's, like, his lane that he really is great at, and that's why The Bear is so good. That's why he's so good in Shameless, because it's like, that's a whole family of people who are just suffering.
Yeah.
And then this movie, you know, like, I think this is his first really good movie that he's been in. So I wonder what the next step will be. You know, I do think that he's probably got he's probably be like the most mainstream pick. But I will say, I think Harris Dickinson will probably have like the best career by the time it's said and done.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that he's also, the other two are American. I think the Americans kind of always have to venture out to European films unless they have something breaking out like this to keep working in those type of like lane. But I think
the Europeans always can play Americans. The Americans can never play Europeans.
So I think like
the game is rigged.
Yeah. Again, I do think like Harris Dickinson will be in something that nobody will watch next, but I think that ends up being like this extra thing that he picks up to become a better actor. Because I mean, arguably he was in Triangle of Sadness, but I do think this movie will probably be the movie a lot of people first see him in, because Triangle of Sadness just still did kind of seem a little bit more geared towards like somebody who will watch, you know, most of Neon or A24's lineup. But Triangle of Sadness is not a movie I hear people talk about too often.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, it had huge hype coming out. It got the recognition, right? Like that's what the acclaim is for. But it didn't lead to anything really.
Like they just got the palm, and then that was it. You know, it didn't lead to now. Like it's even Titane got even less than that. You know, but it's like I think Anatomy of a Fall we're talking about like might go and supersede that. Like it's like it has, for some people, like a Parasite type of
not all
drag.
Palme d'Or winners are created equally.
Exactly.
Right? It doesn't mean anything, honestly.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Again, it is interesting, at least in the time that we've had the podcast, to see the difference between the three. Like, one's too artsy. The other one is like, wow, you guys really picked this comedy? And then this year, it's like, oh, this does have, like, I can see why this is one of the best movies ever.
Of the four that we are really we've been watching movies since, and these are four movies we really like, so it's like Titane is really the one though where you're like, what the fuck, right? Like why did you guys pick that, right? Is it because it was a bad year? Is it because you guys were feeling it like, let's do something interesting? Because Anatomy of a Fall, Parasite, and Triangle of Sadness all make sense to me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But or like they fit together, the three of them, you know, like in a lineup. I'm like, okay, I can see they all got these different things going on. And then Titane is the one where you're like, you really just wanted to throw a wrench in it one year, right? And I'm glad they did. That's why it's one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. But that is interesting.
Yeah, and it I forgot how we got into, Harris Dickinson. So I do think it's this guy just adds something else for the other European directors that want to work with him. They're like, oh, now he can play an American.
Yeah. Getting back to Zac Efron, because you had brought up a great point about him being kind of like Robert Pattinson. He is, but it is, but different, you know?
Different,
it's like TV movies.
Well, right? He also hasn't gone out like to European movies either, you know?
No, yeah, I don't think that they're probably itching to get Zac Efron. No, they have Harris Dickinson. You know, it's like that's the European Zac Efron, probably somebody like that. It's like if you watched High School Musical or you went to elementary school when High School Musical came out, you would know that he's had the juice since day one as Troy Bolton, right? It's like whether those movies are good or not, I think everybody kind of knew that Zac Efron was like, wow, this kid's a star, you know what I mean? Like he's got the thing. But so many of those choices after High School Musical, it's like that's a pretty high for a kid actor. So I think a lot of his choices after are just kind of like whatever. And it wasn't really until Neighbors that people started like, okay, he's an adult now. You know what I mean? But he hasn't had until now, I would say, that Robert Pattinson moment of like a good time or a Shia LaBeouf movie. I don't know. Insert one of Shia LaBeouf's movies or Daniel Radcliffe, you know, where they really step out and do something totally different. Elijah Wood's another one, you know? He still kind of needed that because it's like Neighbors, just a studio comedy with Seth Rogen. That makes sense for somebody like Zac Efron.
Yeah.
But something like this, The Iron Claw, where he can really stretch his acting range and also just show you like how great of an actor he actually is. Maybe I'm sleeping. There's like some really good Zac Efron movie out there. I know he did play Ted Bundy?
Yeah.
Right?
Or Dahmer, I think.
Or one of them. No, he played Ted Bundy because the guy from American Horror Story played Dahmer.
He's in Hairspray, dude. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but that's basically High School Musical.
The greatest beer run ever, bro. What are you talking
about? Or Gold, right? He's got that other movie, Gold.
Dirty Grandpa. What are you talking about with Robert De Niro, bro? Come on.
Yeah, no. I think you're proving my point, Alvaro. Is what I'm trying to say here. This is the first hey, take me serious, real movie, and I think that he knocked it out of the park. And I don't know what this will lead to. Probably nothing, but. Hey, Zac Efron is a serious actor. So let's see where it goes from here, right?
Yeah, I mean, this could be one of the movies that is the few that he's in that people are like, no, like they knew what they were doing with him, right? But hopefully not. Hopefully there's a lot more than that. Yeah, that is.
Let me ask you a question. Let's just pretend for 1 second you're Zac Efron's agent here. Then he gets the nomination for Iron Claw, right, for best male performance in a leading role, right? Doesn't win, of course, because that would be too cool. Action movie or deeper into the dramatic, serious is I have what I think is right, but I want to know what you think. It's what is the next step for Zac Efron?
I think he needs to do it again because he's not going to win. So he needs to try to be I need to try to win in a year. Maybe where I hate to say it this way, but where it's weaker. Because this year just seems like last year seems like it's just too heavy of a slate.
Sorry, it's Giamatti season.
But it's if he's in another movie where he's the lead again and it's not based on a biopic and it has nothing to do with him being huge, which I forgot what movie we talked about where I like that they don't address that he's really big. Everybody's just it doesn't matter. They need to do a movie like that with him because it's this does work too because we do have, I guess, in Zac Efron, we do have a physical actor, He, again, High School Musical, he knows how to dance, he knows how to...
That's true. That's why he was in Hairspray, right?
And so I think when you let him do that, you're almost letting him work out on set, you're going to get a good performance from him. But it's I think I need to see, how he played the serial killer. I need to see something more Richard Linklater, I wish he was in that movie instead of...
Glenn Powell.
And I mean, I'm excited for that movie because Glenn Powell has
comes that. Out. Oh, God damn.
Has that? Glenn Powell has that same kind of I think he's funny, and he only does these action movies, but he was really good in Top Gun. So.
Do you know Glenn Powell is the guy that gets choked out by Bane?
Yeah. No, I didn't know.
I didn't know that either. But you seen it?
Yeah, that's
yeah. You never know. Right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
You never know what'll happen to you one day.
You don't.
One day you're getting choked out by Bane. You're going toe to toe with Tom Cruise in Top Gun Maverick.
So, but that a role like that,
Sydney Sweeney's ass.
Yeah, but Zac Efron needs a movie like that. He needs to be in the Steven Soderbergh movie. One of the 3 of the year.
I think he's got to do another serious role. I could never picture Zac Efron being a superhero or
And he also,
honestly, if anybody who's taking these now, it's what are you doing, right?
I think am I wrong? Was he in Power Rangers?
No, that's the guy from Stranger Things.
That looks
like a Zac Efron variant.
For real.
And I was, I wish for 1 second we were a video. You should have seen the way your eyes lit up. You're like, no, yeah, for real.
Man, that guy looked what the hell? Why does he just look like him with a mustache? It just looks like the guy from in the SpongeBob episode where they're chasing him and he just has a mustache on.
Nah, that's what's his name, Dacre Montgomery or something.
He's been in pretty good movies.
Yeah, I mean, I like him too.
Yeah,
him and Zac Efron could play brothers, I guess. Yeah. But no, I feel like Zac Efron, it'll be the career suicide. It'll be a career suicide to just lean into some cheap, doing a Tom Clancy movie next.
He can't be the lead in a movie yet either, though. That it's too actiony. Not yet. You should do that later.
More physical movies that are about physicality. You know how The Rock is going to play that UFC fighter? That makes sense, because it's that's The Rock doing what he does best, but not being The Rock. And or The Rock in Pain and Gain, right? I know that's probably one of your favorite Rock performances, right?
Yeah.
But because he is The Rock, but he's not, And it's maybe Zac Efron, why waste this body that he's in, right? Why not have him do something physical like this? He should play a bodybuilder, or he should play something a movie that I'm really excited for. Love Lies Bleeding, right?
Yeah.
With that chick that's a bodybuilder in it, like something like that, you know, like that would be kind of sick. Or like, what if Zac Efron was in a Sean Baker movie? Right,
That'd be sick. He should be in some European movie where it's about those old like circus guys who used to like just do
the strongman,
like really strong guy, and like the tragedy stories, or some weird scary story with the character like that, you know. Like, so it has to be something that I think requires some physicality, but then also isn't just a copy of something you would, because I think it might get too old back to back. But I get what you're saying. But because it can't be like an action movie. But I do think it could be a movie where even if he was in Gladiator 2, that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, an interesting casting choice I've seen out there is Jeremy Allen White as Alexander the Great. They were putting up a bunch of pictures and statues and paintings of him.
He does look supposedly what he used to look like.
And he's a small guy, you know? Like, that is another important aspect of it. So that might be interesting. Imagine Zac Efron playing like a Roman emperor. Huh?
I wish he was playing like
Zac Efron should be Caesar.
like a medieval, just buff dude. I'm trying to think. Like, just limited options there, like some Green Knight type stuff, but
I'll take a low blow here. The live action Crimson Chin.
And sorry, the live action Crimson Chin.
All right. So the fun stuff in this movie obviously is like, the cool wrestling stuff, the throwback to the 80s, like wrestling promo videos, right? Those are always so much fun anytime you watch them. Cool soundtrack, obviously, right? Dudes looking like He-Man, very cool. Gorgeous cinematography, of course. One of the best looking movies of 2023 for sure. Time to get to the sad stuff, man. 3 months ago, 2 months ago, how long ago do you think it took? Were you ever thinking that you were like, this is going to be what the movie is? Like, I had heard that they had all died a couple months ago before the movie, but I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know if maybe the movie will be about that, you know? Like, maybe it'll be about the good times or whatever.
You know, I mean, I just didn't know what to expect. Like you said, like it could have been of stuff that happened during, like, before all this tragedy happened.
Hey, they could have made a movie about these guys. It was nothing but the good times.
The Golden Run, yeah. Like, it could have just been about, like, how they got screwed over from championship, like that story, like leaning into the story that was. So yeah, like I wasn't sure. So for it to be about that, but then also not be this cliche look at that, is where I think the film kind of stands out.
And I think what makes this movie so great in that aspect is the two parents, right? These are two very like damaged, I don't want to say fucked up people or whatever, but I don't know if they were necessarily in the right headspace to be raising this many boys with the kind of attitude that they did. But hey, who am I to judge how people think is the right way to raise their kids? But boy, like, my theater was pretty full. It's Christmas night. I think I would say probably 2/3 full, except for the front, obviously. And my audience was really in on the movie from the beginning. So like, in that opening scene where the dad's talking about how he has his favorites, which is like, if you've seen the trailer on Instagram, this is a clip that they've been using for a long time already. Like, there was a girl sitting in front of me with her boyfriend, and she literally went, like, people were like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. And like, it's, you know, a little desensitized to like family stuff like that or whatever, just because like all the jokes and stuff, you know, all the kind of stuff we see online or whatever. But to actually hear it in like a movie or whatever, like, people were taken aback, because like that's a really ugly thing to say, you know? Like, I guess people would joke about that or whatever, right? Like, oh, I have my favorite kid or whatever. But to actually hear it in a movie and for it to be taken that seriously, like, my audience was just like not having it, you know? Like, we all together as a community, they were like, oh my God, like every decision the parents would make, you know, it's like, can you please talk to dad? You guys handle it. My audience like, like, yeah, it was just, it played extremely well in my theater is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, there's those like moments, I think, again, living in a time capsule, you know, where that's the realism of stuff, and that probably is the reason why some of these people are quote unquote more hardened and think they can go through so much more, and then also get, that's their demise, because you're expected to just be okay with these things. And I think, again, the film sets those things up from the get-go, from the beginning, so well that you're already in, repeated audiences that I've been with. I do think they're very participant in this movie, but in a different way.
I didn't think about this until right now, but maybe the saddest aspect of the movie is like these brothers love each other so much, and as tragic as this movie is, the like love aspect between the family is just as well done. So it's like you feel that, like, man, these guys really conveyed like their brotherhood, right? Or like the familial bond. Like I really did believe and was like in their world, like, yeah, these brothers love each other. It's like there was obviously a healthy competition between them, which is like, they're guys and they're doing like the ultimate masculine thing, like wrestling, right? Of course. But I never for one second felt like they were actually jealous of each other, that they disliked each other, or that like I never thought that there was going to be like, oh, this is when the brother's going to betray this one, like I never saw that coming. So I thought they handled that extremely well. But, that's what made it like all the more tragic to me, is like I actually did believe that these characters like felt for each other. I think so. Then when these what I was really trying to get at though is like when they die, or like when one of them would die, it's like they loved each other so hard, but the parents weren't allowing them to grieve as hard as they should. Like the grieving wasn't equal to the love, because they weren't allowed to. So that really like sat with me, and it wasn't something I was able to think about until right now. It's like, geez, like that is a whole other like beast, like this weight sitting on you. Like I'm not even allowed to grieve as hard as I want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think added to that for me a whole other, especially after repeated viewing, that really cemented me, because like I like this movie the second time more than I saw it, is the whole presence of a whole other thing that I didn't really think about, was the relationship between Fritz and his wife, and the significance of her painting, and a lot of the pain that she goes through in this movie, and then at the end, the loss of that love, that I think ultimately ties really up nicely with the thoughts that I feel like the curse is just the existence of Fritz itself, and the death of that love and that relationship also gets cemented pretty well at the end there, with a scene that may seem very like extra at first, or very like out of nowhere, but then perfectly makes sense once you really encapsulate, like I said, like the death of a family as a whole, and that true love just being kind of gone, and physically gone, because they're just the connections aren't there anymore. So that whole aspect of the movie, I think, really made me feel like there's so many things at play here, so many cogs moving at the same time and hitting at the perfect moment in the movie, that's why I think emotionally it hits so hard. And I think it's hit at least most people that I know that've seen it, and at least most of the audiences that I've been in sound, and just based off of hearing, like you're like, this is hitting everybody pretty hard.
Yeah, I mean, from everybody I've seen on the internet who seems to like it, people in real life who seem to like it, I haven't seen the emotional aspect of it treated in a way where it's like, nah, it was overdone, or it was like bait, you know what I mean? Like everybody has kind of respected the tragedy of the movie. And I don't think it's like, oh, they're real people, so I have to, like, it's not like, oh, movie's okay, but they're real, so I respect. Like, no, everybody seems to like love this movie, and it's been hitting everybody I know. Everybody I know who's seen it is like, yeah, I fucking cried like when I saw it, Yeah. And I think it's because they do convey that feeling of grief like so well. Like you said, like this curse between the husband, that the husband, I don't know if it's funny because like you don't know if it starts with him, right? Like it's not like he was born into it.
I mean, it's his doing, but then I did always really take into account that because it's his doing, he's okay. So one of the scenes that I think really stands out to me is when the WCCW is popping off, and he goes on there and kind of feels screwed over because Ric Flair had just beat Harley Race for the championship, and then like, so they're not going to give Kevin the look, you know. And he goes out there and kind of foretells the future of what he says, like, they're going to be the greatest wrestling family and they're all going to be champions. And I think at that moment, he himself is when the movie, at least in my eyes, does it, kind of sets the curse into motion, because all of them disagree with what he's saying. They're all like, well, you know, David's like, it should be Kevin. Kevin's like, it should be me. Kerry at the time is like, he really wanted to be an athlete, you know, so he's just kind of doing this, like, okay. And then the youngest one, I always forget his name, Mike is like, doesn't even want to wrestle at all.
He wants to play the music.
And I think there is like, the movie perfectly sets this ominous feeling when you really pay attention to it. And I do think the dad, him himself, maybe the curse is that he loses a lot of his sons, but it never really seems to him, because of this type of person that he is, that anything is supposed to get to him, or it does get to him. I mean, he is kind of, in a way, he obviously, you can't say he didn't love his sons, but
he's like too angry to quit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? I think his anger, one of his sons dies, and it just makes him more angry. You know what I mean?
And he says that. I mean, Zac Efron says that in the line, like, he just doesn't quit. And, you know, like, the demise is there, it's done, it doesn't matter if it's a curse, if it's real or not, like, it happened. And it's just like constantly, like, you know, if you do this, like, I'm not gonna, like, if you sell the I didn't give you the company to sell it. It's just like this type of person, this type of stern male figure doesn't exist as much anymore because of the world we live in. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it's a very real thing. And I did think that Fritz's character here ends up being the curse. But it's kind of like, because again, the movie does it in a way like he took on the last name from, you know, his grandma's side of the family, so it does kind of seem like, again, he seeks out I'm gonna beat it, like, of course we're not cursed, because look, I'm gonna show you we're not cursed.
It's so, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm just being a softie here, but like, when I walked out of the movie, like, I told my wife, it's like, sheesh, I don't feel like and how do you measure this, right? Like, but it's like, I don't felt like the crime fit the punishment, you know what I mean? Like, especially in this context of them being wrestlers, like, I was like, I know, you know, you could see it from one side of, like, if you want to look at it kind of spiritually, because like, there's a lot of religious aspects into this too, because like, so heavy with this like Christianity down there in Texas, especially in that time, right? But I guess you could say they're prideful, right? And they're greedy and whatever, but it's like, yeah, but why them? You know, like, they're not the only ones who are like this. And this is like one of those things where it's like, they're not only just wrestlers, but like, this is something like most people want for their family. Maybe not to this extent, you know, of like being so bravado, showmanship, machismo about it, right? Because not everybody has the platform to go on wrestling and be like, my family deserves to be the best. But I do believe that that's a sentiment that a lot of people do have about their families, right? It's like, yeah, I want my family to succeed, every single one of us or whatever. I want to all be winners. And like, that's very American, right? But it's like, damn, like, it does feel like a cosmic, like, karma, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you want it to be great, huh? Like, all your sons are fucking dead. And you're like, just because I wanted to be the best wrestling family, you know, like, I'm not even trying to make it like a joke or whatever, but I was just like, damn, like, that felt so harsh for what they wanted, you know? And it's like, that's the like the hand you draw, right? Like, that's just the fucked up part of life, I guess. But
I think that's the thing, though, is
it didn't seem so extreme what they wanted, you know?
But I mean, I think
it is, but it's not.
It is I think it's what he wanted, the selfishness of what he wanted that is the curse, you know, because it's like, this is what he wants, and none of them really at the end make you feel like this is what they actually wanted, and definitely not Kevin. And so to me, that's why it's like, Fritz is a real father to a lot of people, that character, that type of father, and I think that's why it resonates with people too, because it's like not in any way did Zac ever make, I mean, there's a bit, I guess, where you could say he's not on his side, but you can never say that he's like, oh, and he hated him for it. But
yeah, it's like you said, like, these father figures who are like this, it's like the thing that he wanted so badly that cursed his family was not a bad thing to want for his sons to be great. Like, that's what's the fucked up part, you know? It's like, I don't think there's a lot of dads out there who don't want their kids to be great. You know, it's just not on that level of like the world champion, you know, but obviously your dad wakes up in the morning like, I hope my son does great things. You know, like that's not I don't think that's a stretch, you know?
I do take it as, I think the movie sees it more as it's his always trying to get his back, to get his back, you know, and it does see it more as he doesn't want, like, to say, for example, his sons to be great for their sake, but he wants their sons to be great for his sake. Yeah. Because it's like, I need to be validated. And I think that's what the movie kind of takes, is like, that's the curse, the fact that you're saying all of this is coming through because you want this, this, and this. Like, well, these boys love each other. Your wife loves you. Like, what more do you want? Again, kind of seen as being greedy, right? Like, that's the opinion of, at least, that the movie seems to maybe take, or kind of like an outlook on what happened or what the curse is, whatever way you want.
I don't know. Maybe it's just a movie thing too. It's like you watch enough movies, right? And they're all so many cautionary tales out there, right? And almost every movie that is a cautionary tale, it's kind of obvious as the viewer, like you already have it. Like, what are you even looking for? You know? Like, oh man, like dream scenario, right? Like, such a loser. I just have a wife and 2 kids and a big ass house and a job. Like, I'm such a loser. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, let's see how happy you are when you have none of it, right? But that's just, I don't know. That's the movies, man, right?
No, I mean, that's what I mean. This is a little different just because you're like, it's based off of a character, you know, this. You know, like you said, they took stuff out of this movie that also adds to that same feeling. Like, you know, Chris, which is the youngest one that's not even in the movie, the same thing, falls through a curse of the same, like, I have to be great. And it's like, well, you have asthma, you're not as big as us, whatever. Dies to the same thing of, like, trying to live up to the same thing, you know, hopefully dad likes me. So I think that's where it's a little different, because all of these things did happen, like seeds implanted by the dad. And expectations are heavy to an extent, in this family at least, that led them all to a demise. And that is, I don't know if you can't really base on reality, but the fact that, you know, Kevin, after watching the movie, said the most important thing to them was to show that the brothers loved each other. It does seem like between the brothers, a lot of their bond for each other was knowing that they had to struggle with the dad.
Yeah, on some sports tip for half a second here, I could not stop thinking about the Ball family the entire time I was watching this movie. Not to put any like assumptions or anything on them, but I was like, we have a modern story like this, kind of. It's not tragic, obviously, or yet, or knock on wood, hopefully never, but a family like this, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like that. That's literally LeVar Ball right there, the Fritz von Erich, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, yeah, we do still have that. And yeah, there is a good amount of people who think that, like, this is right. This is what you should do. Like, this is what real fatherhood is, you know? Like, people aren't used to that anymore. They see a real father now, and it starts to make them nervous, you know? Why? Because I got my boys in order. Yeah, I don't know.
That is a generational difference, I think.
And I mean, I'm not raising a son, so I don't know. You know, it's way different. But I don't know. A lot of people do think that, like, what happened to men, right? And like, probably what happened to men is there's less Fritz von Erichs and LeVar Balls in the world, honestly.
Yeah, no, it's differently how you get raised. I think even between how my dad raised me and how you're gonna raise your kid, it's a big difference. But I do think you take the plus or minuses. Yes, Fritz was able to, again, pressure creates diamonds. You know, Michael Jackson's dad. But it does it, and it's like, yeah, all 5 of these are famous, but look, you have, I mean, give or take, man. Like, if for you is like normality at the end of the day is living the ideal life, then yeah, you think your outcome is better to just be nice to your kid. But some people see it superstardom or death, and you know, again, Michael Jackson, the Von Erich family, like very tragic endings, but they're like, hey, but they're talking about us, right? I do think it comes down to perspective, because, you know, normalcy doesn't stand out. You don't get a movie if you're just, I lived with a happy family.
It's true.
You know, so
it's true, right?
It's whatever you want.
Sword, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, if you, for like, you know, a lot of times, you know, and these are seen as someone like very pessimistic outlooks, or kind of like, damn, what an asshole. is like there's no legacy to your name, your family doesn't mean anything, but you're like, but I was happy.
Okay, dude, you know the letterbox meme? This happened to my buddy Eric.
Yeah,
literally, this could be like, yeah, I know somebody who this happened to.
Yeah, like where it's like,
I have a buddy who I went to high school with, and 3 of his brothers died to a fucking heroin overdose. Like, nobody's making a movie about him though, and they all worked at fucking the gas station in Wendy's. You know?
Yeah, like my dad has 4 brothers. My mom lost her first kid, almost lost my youngest brother. So it's like, okay, like even in my aspect, I can know somebody who's lost 2-3 kids, and not like maybe they weren't fully grown or whatever, but it's not the craziest thing. And again, you don't get a movie for yourself because the kids that fall or whatever weren't great or they're not known for anything. But I do think that's the kind of stuff that some people, especially creatives, takes as fuel to put their story out there, and then that's why there is this appeal, I think, because people go through these things. But it is interesting that that's your give and take. Be a hard father like this, and you probably will make diamonds, but the diamonds will be susceptible to the weirdest things because they're not used to being regular people, not being the biggest kid and not being able to pick, this is the hottest girl, or having to live through those struggles or, challenges that, and ultimately I think when you're older and you go through them and you don't know how to deal with them, kind of hit you harder. Yeah. They could be your demise,
Yeah, it is so funny what you're saying too about this double-edged sword, because it's like, what about all my pain and suffering? I don't get notoriety or nothing, nothing out of it, nothing. At least it is funny to see at least you got this, but it is true, right? Be like, oh man, you died in a mansion. I died in my apartment and no one knew for 3 days until it started smelling. So
yeah, give and take your stuff. That's what I mean. I don't
cry in the car and the bus. Right?
I don't think that's a pest. I just think that's real. I think that's what those fathers saw it as, and that's why we don't have dads like that as much. But it's the whole of greatness. I think the most based. And that's kind of a weird way to say it, but the most base way to even see this is how in Asian culture they heavily put that pressure on their kids to academically do very well. And even then, they're because look, when you do academically very well, you could be whatever career you want to choose, make this amount of money, and you won't have to worry about it. Does it come from love? Yes, but it's this insane pressure that in a lot of the Asian countries, I gotta see, bam, kill themselves, and it's that is just the most base version of they're not asking you to lift these crazy weights, they're asking you to just do this heavy extent of what you're expected to do. And even then, people are geez, they're so strict on them,
especially when you don't come from anything and you're trying to make sure your kid doesn't end up in a lower spot than you. It's there's just, that's what I'm saying. It's not to forgive these parents for anything, but why not also have some fucking empathy? It's people raise their kids the way they think that they're supposed to, not because anybody has a fucking manual. Oh, I aced it. You just do what you think you're supposed to do. And sometimes it's a fucking tragic outcome like that. And
that's why I think it's I can't say that Fritz didn't love his kids. I do think he did. It's he. Especially a man like that will be I don't have the fucking manual. So what did you want me to and it comes from love. I just didn't want them to be me.
It's funny too, or not funny, but it's he wanted his kids to be the world champion. They didn't want to, but he's you know how fucking good it would feel to be the world champion. And that's what I want you to feel, even if you don't want it.
Exactly. And then that's where it's a double-edged sword, like you're saying. Ultimately, the parent wants what they might know or might feel is this ultimate feeling. And it's also at the end, but would the kid even feel it if it's not you? It's
I think these stories are funny. You'd be oh, so sad. This athlete, soccer player, whatever the fuck, he crashed and burned at fucking 27. He had to retire because his knees were blown out. He only made $35 million. And if he had never done this, he'd probably be shoveling shit in the country that he came from. Be they probably should have just let him shovel shit his whole life. And then he wouldn't have had this sad story about how his knees don't work anymore.
Yeah, kind of that is
a fucking break, bro.
It's very similar to even in American sports when you see something like Henry Ruggs, right?
Yeah.
It's you committed this horrible thing and who knows how long he's going to be in jail, maybe 15 years, right? But when he gets out of jail, that money is still his, that he was playing with the Raiders. So it's he spent those years in jail, but he probably still was better off doing all of that than what if he just wasn't an athlete. And then that's where it's a double-edged sword, like you're saying. Like, ultimately, the parent wants what they might know or might feel is this ultimate feeling. And it's also at the end, but do the kid
Yeah.
Like if he just was like, oh, I'll just go to college.
If he was a gas station attendant who fucking murdered somebody like that.
Yeah, exactly. No. It'd be like, so he'd come back from jail even more broke and probably have to go. But now it's like, he's going to still have those people who are now be like, I'm sure you want to rehab your image, right? Like they're going to help him. Oh. Or he has his own money, you know?
Yeah.
He'll own a dispensary,
if he ever gets out or something, he'll fucking, I opened up these rehab places or whatever the fuck, whatever, you know?
So they have that chance.
And then the people whose family died are like, yeah, my mom or whatever is just still dead and didn't get nothing.
So I think that's like that's, you know, being too real sometimes, but I think that's an aspect that the movie doesn't, again, like you said, doesn't choose a side, because at the end of the day, Kevin doesn't hate his dad.
No.
Like, you know, so because it's like, you understand the older you get, but what he wanted for me was just this. Did he execute it well? Probably not. But he also in this movie, and I think they would have shown it, like he never beat them. You know what I mean? He never inflicted damage on them. It was just based through like getting, like, the thing is very physical, you know, but it's like, hey, tough loss. Like, you know, I went through it.
I think this movie definitely handles all of this very well. Like you're saying, like the fact that you can even have these nuanced opinions, it's like that might be a problem. I think that's what makes the movie great versus like where other movies can be heavy handed, right? If like Sean Durkin is like, and the parents fucking suck. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what he's saying here. Because it's like, this movie is in a way like real life, because it's like, it's very, very complicated. I know people don't like that anymore, but life, movies, stories, it's all very, very complicated. Like, is the dad the bad guy in this movie? Like, if you want to see everything in black and white, but no, he's not.
Yeah, he's not.
At one point he was the hero of this story, you know? And it's like, that's just what it is.
Bro, yeah, I even think like laid out, right, that they don't really talk about this in the movie, but he's obviously a heel. And later when you look up to it, he's played a Nazi character in real life when he was fighting, never having been to Germany. But it's the understanding, and I think, again, understanding at these primitive levels of wrestling before it was integrated as one big whole, as it is now, that you could be hated so much that you'll be popular. Those kind of ideas that are the basis of what the business is now and what keeps it going all the time. And I think that like Fritz von Erich obviously showed with the WCCW that he was ahead of his time. So again, you're talking about somebody who, you know, goes up to bat 10 times, is hitting 7 for 10. So all of a sudden be like, I didn't raise my kid well, is the one strike. Like, sorry, but like I had all these other things that I was juggling. And again, like you said, not something that people like to see is very, very black and white. But I think it's because like out of this pressure of love or whatever, you can create a curse. And I think you brought this up in the top 10 episode. Is that not the same thing similar to Hereditary? That same kind of
movie I always wanted. When Martin Scorsese said, if Hereditary was a movie about family drama without ghosts and demons or whatever, it would be The Iron Claw. It'd be about wrestling.
You know, and it's like at the end of the day, in Hereditary, like she wants the family to be great at any cost. And it's a horror movie. Yeah, in a horror movie, it's like, wow, you really went that far? Yes. Yeah. And then it's the same thing with Fritz von Erich here. Like, oh, my bad. Like, I didn't know I made some bitches. You know, but
I rewatched The Green Knight recently, and it's like King Arthur is like, is it wrong to want greatness for you? You know, it's like these are just people who love other people, want good things for them.
They came from struggle for the most part.
Sometimes in the worst way possible.
Yeah,
you know?
And that's a bigger discussion than us. But me
and you are not going to get to the end of that. That's a human enigma.
But it's like, I think again, like you said, like this movie talks about that without throwing it in your face. Like we're sitting here, and that's why these movies like this resonate with me, because you're talking about something, again, a biopic that a lot of times could be more similar. Like, you know, you could take the way of the Weird Al story, right? Where it's like you could choose so many ways to address this. You know, I'm sure there's some Showtime some Lifetime movie about Michael Jackson's life that I've never seen, right? Mm-hmm. It's because it doesn't have any of these nuanced conversations we're talking about. It's just, this is what happened in his life. So sad.
It didn't feel like a book report. And that's where a lot of biopics can be bad. And then if the people are involved too, sometimes it can't get messy enough, because they're like, you know, in conversation with this movie, people were talking about Priscilla, and they were like, that's why the last end of Priscilla sucks, because she is involved with the movie, and at the end of the day, she still loves Elvis Presley and is not going to give all the fucking dirt and tea and whatever the fuck about their relationship at the end of the day. So guess what? For the last 30 minutes of the movie, she's going to sit in a house alone because that's easier than actually telling the truth. Like, so why do you think Steven Spielberg waited to make The Fabelmans until his parents died? Because he didn't want to have that conversation with them when they were alive. You know what I mean? So it is what it is what it is in that point. Like, biopics, they need something more, and this movie really did that, because it also is like, I don't want to say not narrative driven, but it's very cinematic. You know what I mean? For a biopic, it's like you don't really know how much time is passing. Like, it could have been 10 years, it could have been 3 years. You know what I mean? It's just it really uses the fact that it's a film to, like, let's treat it like one. So, like, the way they pass time, the montages and stuff like that, the editing, like, I just loved it. I felt like they were using all of the movie tools, you know what I mean?
Even
the right way.
The song, I think that
Tom Sawyer.
Yeah, Rush, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's how many times has that song been used in anything?
I love you, man, dude.
But, like, you could almost say, like, really, that song you're gonna use, but
that song fucking sucks. But in the concept,
exactly,
that context,
that's what I wanted to get at.
Yeah,
no, that's what I wanted to get at, though. Is that everybody can, like, Rush fucking sucks, you know? But it's like, in this movie, you're like, hell yeah, like as it comes on, and it could be any other song, but it's the fact that the director,
for nerds, that's why
the director,
they're lame.
The director could get you to be like, all right, I fuck with it. It's fine. Yeah, like, that's how you know it's good.
But that's also wrestling, right? Like, this is really lame. Like, it's not. It's also the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, we've been going for an hour. I feel like we covered a lot about this movie without just kind of rambling about small details, you know? I think we covered it pretty well. I wanted to ask you about this, though. This is some real life reporting. You went and saw the WWE in real life, dude.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Cinema? Was it Kino in real life? What was it like?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as somebody who had never been, right, there's like a lot of things, especially after seeing this movie, where you're like, oh, they make it, they enamor the era of it when they first came out by looking this way, or like, I'm sure this is what it used to look like. But I don't think, like, the product is still basically a lot of the same. And I think I told you that because, well, one, I will say one of, like, physically, the ring still is the same size, which every time I look at it in TV now, I assume it's bigger.
It's small.
It's very small.
Yeah.
So
they barely fit.
Yeah, exactly. And like you would think that you're like it makes you think like you should look for people who are Rey Mysterio size.
Yeah, why is everybody 6'5"?
But like, why are you guys so? But then you're like, that's why it makes them look even bigger, right? Like Andre the Giant looks like something bigger than life in there. So that was cool to see. But then also that the way these people are coming out is still basically how the Von Erichs would come out. Pick a song, bro, and now we have pyros, right? Like they have better technology, but that feeling of being live and being like in theater, of you buying into this character is still the same, because at the end of the day, like dragging in that live performance, that feeling, I think is a lot easier when you're there. I will say that the power of cameras, and I still would say even cinema, is that how it's presented on TV always makes it look even bigger than it does in person.
Remember, who gives a fuck about a camera angle?
yeah, exactly. You know, even that, because I did tell Alvin that, like, I always thought when they did record it that this place was like huge. Like there's so many people here, and there is, but they're also doing it still in these stadiums where they used to do wrestling still.
Like 30,000 people maybe.
Just like, yes, right? Like there's still, the fact that it's 30,000 packed as opposed to a Rams game that would be 30,000 in a bigger, but they don't need a bigger stadium. Like when they go to Staples, it's because it's WrestleMania. You know, like for the most part, they're still doing this in very Iron Claw-ish type Texas domes. Isn't that insane that you would always just
assume it's like, oh, they're at the Staples Center, they're at the Honda Center. They're like, no.
And it's like
they're in some rinky-dink casino.
I think we were having this discussion with like my brother, same thing, like in football, like the fans that go there are the wealthy ones, but the real fans are people who have to watch it on TV. Yeah. So the thing can be big, and people who aren't going because it's too expensive for them, or they're not going to where it's big, you know. And I do think WWE is like that, and I kind of going back to the question is, I do think it's so much better to see it in person, and I do think that same feeling that you kind of get watching the movie. Obviously, there's no brother love there, but the fact that you're given a show, and then that these people kind of just really are doing gymnastics for your sake. Same thing that I say about athletes. Like, the guys do it because I like it. They're my jesters as much as like they get paid a lot. It's like because all of us want to see these guys do flips because none of us can do them. So we're like, yeah, I want to see I want to see this 260 pounder do a flip. Like, fuck yeah.
It's Cirque du Soleil for Americans.
Yeah, and then you have something like, for me, for the longest time, even before, especially before this movie, I did think it was very American to like wrestling or Japanese, or Mexican. Like, just like North American, and then I was like, because of course Japanese are always like they like the cool stuff over here, but it's like I didn't know the UK love, like the European love for wrestling. So it did end up being like, wow, a lot of things that I love.
Culture to wrestling, bro.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of things that I do love are universal. Football, basketball, and like wrestling. Like, they're very like anywhere in the world you could do these things.
Yeah.
So again, like I actually really enjoyed it, and I do think like it's
fellas worldwide love two big old dudes in underwear slamming each other into the ground. It's just sick, and we've loved it since the gladiator times or the Aztec times, whatever the fuck.
Biggest
two dudes in a loincloth going at it. Woo!
Are they muscular and strong? Huh?
People been sacrificed over that kind of bullshit.
Exactly.
Wars have been fought over wrestling matches.
People make so much money betting on this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It really is such a sick thing. Was that your first like theatrical entertainment experience outside of something like a theme park? Like, like Universal's got like Waterworld the show, and I don't mean to diminish wrestling, but it's like it isn't too far off from something like Waterworld the show. It's just done at the best level,
Yeah, no, it's still, I understand.
Like, have you seen a play? Have you seen a musical?
I've seen plays.
Before?
I've seen music. I've seen musicals before. Play. Let me try to think. Actually, not a play. Like, no, I haven't gotten like Wicked or anything like that. So, I'm trying to maybe like missing something but like more stage. I get what you're saying. Like, I've never been to Disney on Ice, stuff like that, right?
Like stuff that's not sports, just entertainment,
and not concerts. Because concerts are even different. Yeah. No, I don't. I think so. You could consider it that. I've been before, like as a kid, and maybe you went to in elementary, like when they would do like field trips to like the Duck Stadium, and it wasn't like a game, but it was like a exhibition of like kind of like athleticism. So it's like that's kind of like different for school, right?
I saw Chuck Norris do a kung fu presentation one time, like that's that, cool. That's like an exhibition thing.
Like, yeah. See, no
kid.
Like, I guess this would maybe be it. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to think. There's nothing else that. Like, everything else is sports driven, so it's not scripted. Yeah. And this is the one thing that it's like, it's scripted, but it's also like what's happening is real. The outcomes are scripted. It's very unique, So no, I would say maybe so. Yeah, it would be the first thing like that.
That's cool. I went once when I was a kid, and it's funny. We both had the same experience. We both had surprise intros by The Rock. When I was a kid, that's insane, right? Like, they're still using that bit. The Rock is back. Be like, dude, that was a bit in like 2005. And it's still a bit now, and it still fucking works, right?
What's interesting is to think about that. Like, when he said that is because he had gone to leave to make a couple movies, and then now it's like, I feel like because he's like, I don't know what's the in between time between his movies. I think that's why he's coming back to WWE to be like a forefront. I mean, it doesn't take them a lot.
I think he's doing less. It would seem like he's doing less movies now that he's trying to be serious again. Black Adam was the last thing for him.
He's like, I'm done.
Like, I have to be a human again.
Yeah, and I do think
good. I
do think the one thing I understand from like seeing John Cena, Batista, there's another one I'm missing. I guess, The Rock, is that to perform for the WWE, and when they pay more attention to it, they have to be at a certain physical level. They have to be not injured, and I don't think The Rock's had to really worry. Like, he can continue to do his heavy workouts, but what would be the reason The Rock got injured in the past, I don't know, 15 years?
Probably just like pulling some muscle or
yeah, like they were like,
some on-set accident or whatever.
He's on there.
Does Rock even do his own stunts?
Yeah, probably exactly. Not. Like we're on there, right? And I'm looking at him, and I'm like, he literally looks his physical peak right now. as the like he could play The Rock and WWE for another 20 years, honestly.
Probably.
And I guess like what I'm trying to get at is that if he does less roles, he could do more of the WWE, and I think this year he's gonna do that. And he has to be physically obviously fit, because that's kind of the joke as well already, is that he was pretty gassed and just doing his little bit that he did on Monday when I saw him. So I do think there's a reality to that. He has to be an athlete performance level, which I don't think he has to be for movies. He just has to look huge.
Yeah, he. You know what's funny too? It's like he almost was a good actor once.
Yeah,
like he's been there. He's done it. Like I think that Pain and Gain is probably his best role. I like him in the movie Snitch. I think that's probably his best actual movie that it's in. Even though it's not a very good movie, but it's like I think that's The Rock's best overall thing that he's in. And
most interesting role, probably the Southland Tales one.
Yeah, I've never seen that movie. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it one day. That's one where I'm like, I don't know. It's so hit and miss that I'm like, I don't want to decide. I don't feel like deciding myself. So I don't think I'm going to watch this,
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to it, because I do think that if you're a good wrestler, that you are already a good actor. So it's just about finding that what suits you, because it's like I think Ronda Rousey tried it and she just has no charisma, and maybe it's because she's a real fighter, not an entertainer. She's a real fighter, so I think that's probably why it never really worked for her. Being like, I know she was in the WWE for a while or whatever, and wasn't she a champion at one point?
Yeah, she was.
I'm pretty sure they gave that to her because she's Ronda Rousey, not because she fucking earned it.
That was like again getting a little bit carried away with the discussion, but like during
who cares? It's wrestling.
What WWE is now, it's just right now it's back at its peak. It seems like universally seems so. But
the numbers say so.
When Ronda Rousey was around and that stuff was going on, was when the numbers were going down. So I do think it's like they tried to appeal with Ronda Rousey, but it's what I tell my brother is you can't. It doesn't matter if you're a real fighter if you have no character. So it's like Ronda Rousey was just charisma. Ronda Rousey, and it's like, why is she gonna win? Because she literally could fuck you up, like she's trained to.
Also, she was copying Roddy Piper, right? Like that was another thing.
Oh yeah, the font. Yeah, I do see.
I that's one thing I don't like about wrestling is all the regens. I really don't like that.
So that's like, again, when the company was a little different. So she was around, but then we were watching a lot of old tapes.
Oh, have you seen the new wrestler? Recently? This big fucking blonde buff guy. His name's Triple J.
Yeah. But you before, it's like you had during it, like with us, like Ken Shamrock was a UFC fighter that was in the WWE for a bit, and he kind of had more of like he was guest referee. Or then you have kind of like Mike Tyson too, like he was in DX for a bit. They had the beef, and they just knew how to insert them. And like now,
Donald Trump,
yeah, they learned how to insert them better. And then I do think they've caught their formula again, talking about Triple H is the person directing the stuff now. So I just think when you have somebody who came from the Attitude Era, I was telling my brother that it's like we were watching an old episode. I forgotten what highlights it was, and it's when The Rock was beefing with Stone Cold. So they come out in the beginning of the show, and Vince is there, and Triple H is the champion, and so he comes out talking about like
whoa,
yeah, and it's like I told them, I'm like, it peaked, bro. Like, look at that. Like, the third best character is one of like the greatest of all time, Triple H. Like, you know what I mean?
I would love to watch it again, but I just know I'm never gonna have The Rock and Stone Cold and Triple H.
That's like the one that like, and then Shawn Michaels is like, fourth, fifth, and you're talking about like,
shit, Sting came down for the rafters.
Yeah, like as the fifth person, you're just kind of like,
dude, you ever go back and watch the Royal Rumbles and just be like, dude, this is fucking stacked,
like just packed.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we actually did watch one last night. We were watching because recently you've just been, there's a lot of WWE content on Peacock, like all of the old stuff, right? Yeah, all of the old stuff is in there,
all that stuff.
And so like we were just watching. Stone Cold has a series, or they have a series on all of their huge superstars and what their favorite matches were. And I swear to you, it's 4 hours every episode. So it's literally just the matches stacked, right?
Yeah.
And they showed like when he won the Royal Rumble, and I'm looking at all these entrances coming in. I'm like, dude, holy shit! Like, you know what I mean? And then like sometimes
Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Kurt Angle,
variances of people too. Like at the time he wasn't Mankind, he was Dude Love, or like he's not Gold Dust, he's Blue Dust. Yeah, it's like all this dumb stuff. Like you said, at the end, corny. as like, and the Iron Claw gets that correct as well. Very corny, but also some of the coolest stuff you've ever seen.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Obviously, we really fucking like this movie. It was just, looking back on it, Captain Hindsight here, it was just born to be one of our favorite movies. I feel like, right? It's like you rarely get it this right with the cast where it's like, wow, I really like all three of these fucking guys. Like before this movie, this isn't the movie that made me like them. I already like these guys.
They just validated
it's a subject I already like. Wrestling, right? Family trauma and brotherhood and tragedy and all that. Oh, I'm in. Like cool fucking looking movie stylistically, right? Cool editing. It's just like, it's so obvious that this was going to be one of our favorite movies, right?
If I could insert in this, it'd be literally just the perfect tie-in would be the Vince McMahon meme of like, they're making an Iron Claw movie. I'm interested. It has Zac Efron. Oh, it has it has Harris Dickinson in it. Oh, Jeremy Allen White. Oh, and it's shot on film.
Yeah.
So,
in 20 years when they're asking you, what did you think about the Iron Claw? He was special.
Yeah, Sean Durkin, he was special.
Yeah, it's fucking great, right? It was like a perfect Christmas gift. So
yeah, and I did think I was reading the A24 magazine that they came out with this movie. That's when when they're promoting their stuff too. Like this one's a banger. They throw you out we made a magazine for this one. A lot of there's Christmas's matches on here that were in the movie. So I do think it was even that when it came out, it did make a lot of sense.
I mean, Iron Claw, go for a cool wrestling movie. Leave with this gut punch family tragedy. It's just this beautiful fucking movie. I mean, I think it needs to be seen. It demands to be seen, and you should definitely see this on the big screen if possible. If near you, see it on the biggest one you can. I would have loved to see this in IMAX. That's probably the last thing I'll say.
I will say in the light of Oppenheimer 4K being sold out, the Holdovers Blu-ray being sold out, I do think there's a chance this movie could be the same.
Yeah, man. Physical media is back. Wrestling is back.
So nostalgic.
Physical stuff is back,
The future's so over. Yeah.
The future's so over, man. We're going back to when I was 6 years old.
Yeah. Hell yes. Everybody agree this is the coolest? All right. I'm done with that.
All right, cool. We'll see you next time. Poor Things. I can't wait to talk about that movie.
That'll be great.
All right, guys. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.